So judges, I'm very excited to introduce you to our 3 finalist teams. Emily Bryson and Natasja Enriquez from Miami, Yunru Daisy Chen and Adam Margolis from Miami, Will Compton, Sean O'Neill, and Eddie Smith from San Luis Obispo, California. First, a big round of applause to all of you. Finalists, the judges have looked at your designs and they're eager to hear more about your design ideas. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to our judges. Elise Roy helps companies analyze products, services, and programs from the vantage point of people with disabilities. Elise draws on her 15-plus years of working with the disability community and her diverse career path as a lawyer who worked on the United Nations Disability Treaty, marketing manager, and product designer to shape solutions for her clients. Todd Waterbury is the Chief Creative Officer at Target, where he establishes the creative direction of Target's marketing efforts, leading an internal team of art directors, designers, developers, writers, and producers, as well as its external agency and design partners. Todd also proudly serves on the Board of Trustees of Cooper Hewitt. Eleanor Morgan is SVP of Experience at Casper, where she's responsible for the design and development of Casper's end-to-end customer experience across digital and retail touchpoints. She believes design and brand can make bedtime cool again and leads teams to create customer experiences that make shopping for sleep and the routine around it joyful. Caroline Bowman is the director of Cooper Hewitt's Smithsonian Design Museum, the only museum in the country devoted exclusively to historic and contemporary design. Cooper Hewitt's special exhibitions and educational programs tell design's story, raise awareness of design's universal value, and demonstrate design's power to make a difference, and you had a chance to experience some of it this weekend. Mike Milley is the Director of Creative Consulting at BMW Group Design Works in Los Angeles. He leads a cross-disciplinary team that brings the future to life at the intersection of research, strategy, and foresight. He was the founding director of Samsung's Lifestyle Research Lab and worked on design teams at Nike and Philips. You saw some of his work upstairs earlier today. Keith Kirkland is a mechanical engineer, accessories designer, and industrial designer, as well as the CEO and co-founder of WearWorks, a haptic design company. The company's first product, Wayband, is a wearable tactile navigation device that guides users who are blind or have trouble seeing to an end destination using only vibration. You saw this piece in our Access Plus Ability exhibition earlier today. David Stowell, you know from your studio visit yesterday of Smart Design. David is the founder and CEO of Smart Design, one of the world's premier strategic design companies that helps people live better and work smarter. The OXO Good Grips line he created in 1989 pioneered the concept of universal design in everyday products. Smart Design was the recipient of Cooper Hewitt's 2010 National Design Award for Product Design. Thank you, judges. Please join me now in welcoming our first presentation with Emily Bryson and Natasja Enriquez. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Natasja.
And I'm Emily.
And we created ArtShare. So our mission was to create a way that would enable the blind and visually impaired to create art. This is important to us because we ourselves are artists and have benefited greatly from the value and pleasure that is making art. So you might be thinking, why would someone who's visually impaired want to create art? So the first reason is a sense of achievement. So us as artists, it's very fulfilling to have a blank sheet of paper and to create something from nothing. Along with that, we did some research and we found that not only is art making fun, but it really helps with the facilitation of motor skills. So as a blind person, your hands are sort of your eyes, so you really need to refine those skills. If someone who is blind didn't create art, they would have to take time out of their schedule to do like exercises instead.
We also found through our research that there were a lot of foundations that focused on making art museums accessible to those who are blind and visually impaired, but they never tackled the topic of actually allowing them to create art. So we wanted to tap into that.
Yeah. So we had the opportunity to visit the Lighthouse for the Blind in Miami, Florida, and this is an organization which facilitates different sort of activities and classes for those who are blind.
So there we met the head of the art department there, Nelba Gonzalez, and she showed us a whole tour of the studio. And there was a huge range of work there, from textured art to paper mache to pottery. So there was a huge enthusiasm within the classroom, which was really interesting for us to see. So these are some of the people that we met personally. The first group is Gracie and Jasmine. They're both interested in art in a more casual way, but they told us that they enjoy making pom-poms, which are these like puffy little things of yarn, and they just like to do that on their free time. The second person we met is Eddie, and he's really interested in creating abstract art. So he likes to do that both at home and the studio. And the final person is Jenny May, and she's one of the most passionate people that we met there. So she's really interested in making pom-poms into bears, and she likes to give them as gifts to her friends and her family. And she has to actually take the pom-poms from home to the studio, so that's kind of an inconvenience for her that we thought was interesting.
Yeah. So after going to our lighthouse, we had several realizations. So we realized that art is hugely important for people who are blind, and almost more so than those who are sighted. So our first realization was that people of all ages were creating art at the lighthouse. So like Emily and I, we don't really know many adults who like paint for recreation. Like we don't come from artistic families, but it was really inspiring and really fun to see people of all ages creating art. Another thing we realized was there was a huge culture of gift giving. So all these people who would create art, they really valued giving it to their loved ones. Another thing we discovered was that when people try to push art onto the blind and visually impaired, they try to push concepts like color and 2D without realizing that if you were born blind and you've never been able to see these things, it's something you're never going to be able to conceptualize and is unhelpful and really uninteresting to them. So in order to create art that is interesting for them, you have to engage them with their senses. So we looked at some pre-existing products, and so they were all inaccessible and hard to find. You'd have to search on some weird, obscure website. And added on that, they were all super expensive and manufactured for children, mainly.
Some of the products that really inspired us, the one on the top left is called an APH drawing board, and you basically use a pen and you can create a positive mark freehand. We actually talked to Nelba, the head of the art program there, and she told us that she'd heard about it, but it was very expensive and hard to find, so it just wasn't convenient to have in the studio. And we also found a toolkit that is for children to practice their different motor skills, which is something else we were interested in. So it's interesting because it has little plastic trinkets that each one focuses on a different motor skill, so that was really inspiring to us as well.
So we started to draw concepts, and we really wanted to tackle all the motor skills without thinking that one was more important. So we were trying to sort of put all of the aspects into one thing, and we realized that that was sort of like impossible to do. So we decided that instead of doing instead of doing something that was an all-in-one, we would do a kit that would have, multiple features.
Yeah, so we decided to focus on 3 different motor skills. One is winding, the other one is rolling, and the other one is stamping. So this was the first part. Before we started the concept sketches, we wanted to do some ergonomic studies. So we basically took a hand and we did the motions that you'd be using the tool with. And we looked at the impression that it made on clay. So for rolling, it's kind of this sort of impression. And for winding, it's kind of this impression. So just to get some inspiration. And then this is when we started our prototype. So we really wanted it to be ergonomic. So we created various forms of the roller tool prototypes, the stamper tool prototypes, and the winder tool prototypes. And we also had a sensory board, so we can sort of test the people at the Lighthouse for the Blind and see what they thought about all the different textures. So this was a really important part of our process. We wanted to design with them and get their input. So we went back to the Lighthouse and we handed them each product after explaining to them what the function was, and we got their insights on it. And they told us that generally they liked the larger tools because it gave them more stability. And they also really preferred the hexagonal shapes because those turns gave them a better grip. So that was really interesting. So these are the final products. So the winding tool, the stamping tool, and the rolling tool.
So this is the winding tool, which, like all the other tools, would dispense a texture onto a sheet of paper. So this one is interesting because it sort of works like a compass, where the user will be able to make a perfect circle. So whether you have a shaky hand, you'll be able to make that shape. And our goal with these products was not only to make a tool for people who are blind, but is just to create a tool in general that us as artists would like to use.
Yeah, so some of the features, it has an adjustable nozzle, so you could do any circumference that you wanted to. You hold one side and you turn with the other. It has a rubber padding grip on the bottom, so you can have some friction and more stability when you're holding the center of it, as well as replaceable cartridges, so you can change the texture pack to whatever texture you want.
Mm-hmm.
This is the second tool. It's the roller tool. It was our original idea. It allows you to freehand draw a positive textured line on basically any surface that you want. It has a very ergonomic profile. It's what they preferred, as well as the thumb grip, and the cartridge refill process is you sort of squeeze it and you pull it, so you can put any different texture that you want. The stamper tool is the final tool, and it's the stamping motion. It has, you're able to identify the different borders, so there would be different shapes that you could use. You could use a heart, a triangle, anything you want that could really be interchangeable. So the cartridge refill process is the same of the squeeze and pull, as well as the rubber grip on the bottom and the hexagonal shape that they preferred as well.
So market accessibility was really important to us. So like we said earlier, these products are really inaccessible and expensive. So because this is a tool that anyone could use regardless of visual impairment, we imagine it at department stores in the craft section. We imagine it being introduced in the classroom, and also like online retail. So basically very easy to find.
So this was the model making process. I had some very basic orthographics in the beginning, but we went to a family friend and we used a lathe machine to sort of get the form made out of PVC softcore plastic. So we took the panels and we put the orthographics in it. So that was just the process.
Yeah. So it's very important, since this is like a mainstream product, we wanted it to be stylish for both people who are sighted and blind. So if you guys saw the box earlier, there's these little tactile circles on it. So we were thinking about packaging and how most of the time there's graphic decals. So we were thinking of sort of something that's interesting texturally, like tactilely. And we wanted to include a set of instructions that would be easy for someone who is blind and someone who is sighted to understand.
So this is just an overview of everything we've done and the sort of pillars we were trying to reach: accessibility, self-sufficiency, and to have it be ergonomic. So some things, the instruction manual makes it self-sufficient. We want them to be able to understand it on their own when they're introduced to it. It's all made of wood for the ergonomic sense, and as well as our prototyping process. So.
Mm-hmm. And so now we're thinking about product expansion. So this is really exciting. So we're thinking about different texture packs. So it's like, you get the one that it comes with, but there'll be like a revolving catalog in stores, maybe based on season or different holidays. And the different textures can be associated with those things. So for summer, you might get a texture that is reminiscent of grass and has the scents.
Yeah, one thing we noticed in the studio is that their studio is sort of stagnant. They're always using the same materials, so that can get really boring. So we were thinking in the future we could sort of have this revolving texture pack so they can expand the kind of art that they make and sort of get experimental with it. It could always be interesting to them in the way that it is to us.
Yeah. Another interesting thing that we noticed is when we went to the lighthouse and we gave them the prototypes, they would grab the objects and make like noises and hum tunes associated with the action that they were doing. So we thought that in the future it would be cool to put like a musical touch on it.
Yeah, Nelba also thought it would be useful so that they know when the mark is actually being made. So they have some sort of affirmation, maybe to be a more fulfilling experience for them.
And that's it. Thank you, guys.
So we just go?
Yeah. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yes.
I knew that would make you laugh. Did you spend much time making yourself blind with blindfolds on while you were doing this?
Oh, one thing that was really fun was that Nelba, the head of the Lighthouse for the Blind, she actually did this exercise with us where she made us close our eyes. We were blindfolded, and she would have us test different materials, because she said one of the huge things about doing art with people who are blind is it's training them to understand materials. So that seems super simple, right? So she put like a wood star in our hand, a plastic star, and then like a, what was the other one?
I don't know.
It was some other material. I think it was like a glass.
Foam.
And I had a super hard time distinguishing all of them apart. And it's something, like looking at it, because as a sighted person, I've been reliant on my sight my whole life, that you don't realize like how similar these things are and how integral it is to be able to distinguish the two.
World, isn't it?
Yeah.
As a design researcher myself, I'm really impressed with the depth that you went to in your research. You clearly built a lot of empathy for your users. I heard you a couple of times during your process talk about things that you were surprised by, that like, oh, it's interesting that people got really bored by using the same materials over again. That gave us an idea to do something like this. And I think that really great design finds that balance between insight and empathy or imagination. Right, and putting yourselves in the position of your user helps you build that kind of empathy that will serve you really well as designers going forward. One thing that I was curious about, could you talk a little bit about the process of getting from your initial research and insights to the 3 specific products that you got to? Because there was a little bit of a fast forward in your presentation. You're like, and then we did these 3 things. And I'm super curious, was that more of an intuitive, like, as let's use our imagination and as designers sort of create some potential solutions, or were there specific things that you learned or saw in your research that led to those 3 solutions?
Yeah, well, researching, we saw that there were different exercises, that there were sort of like drills that people would do to gain different motor skills, and it was stuff with like normal household objects. So like matching different lids to different sizes of like cans, for example. So we kind of took those exercises and then we took the motion that it was doing, and we just chose 3 that we thought were most common and all the ones that we saw, and we kind of just used those motions minus all the tools, the household products.
Yeah.
I'm about to say, I'll go. So I spent a lot of time working with blind people, and so like I was really impressed again by the level of research. Like it's really an interesting world to walk into when you really think about what it means to like remove sight from the experience as a totality, and it takes a lot of empathy to kind of get into those socks and get into those spaces. So kudos a whole bunch on that. On the super positive end, like the ideation looks amazing. I don't know, like I feel like I wasn't drawing like that until I got to college. So I don't know who you guys were working with or like which one of you, but great work. You really kind of fleshed through the ideas. I love the process of the materiality and like the studies and the form studies. It's like at the end of the day as a designer, you're not really paid for what you produce, you're paid for the process in which you produce that thing. And so having this process and being able to go through this was like it was nice to kind of get into the world that you were building, like without you actually being here to kind of explain that. I think one of the things that I'm curious about from the point of view of just functionality. I'm also an engineer at heart, and so I was curious as to kind of like, have you guys really thought of like what this texture material like is, like what rolls out? Is it like a tape? Is it like a glue? Is it like an ink? I was really curious around like the physical manifestation of like how do you create these textured products, if you thought about it.
Yeah, so it's really important for us to make it like non-messy and like super, like dry super quickly, because one of the issues is that if it's messy and you can't see, you're gonna get your hand like all dirty. So we were really thinking about like stickers, and our original inspiration was the whiteout dispenser. So we don't have all the specifications on how that will work, but we know that we want to integrate that type of technology, like a sticker tape type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then I think also too, it's like when I initially saw it, I also thought it was the pieces were really big. Mm-hmm. But then it was really also great. You'd be like, okay, well, these were the sizes that were preferred. And I'm curious as to, because it looked like the marketing is in the space for children, mm-hmm. Who will probably have like much smaller hands in general. And I'm curious as to, were you able to talk to any visually impaired kids at all to get their feedback, or was it mainly adults you were working with?
It was mainly adults that we were working with, yeah.
Okay. Oh, fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
One last question. I'm curious what people said they would make with this. Like, you guys put so much great thinking into the form factor of it and how people hold and use it, and I'm curious if you got any feedback about what the output people wanted to make from these were.
Yeah, so one thing that really inspired the whole different texture packs is that people were saying that it would be great for like holiday cards. We talked about the possibility of like like a texture pack that like resembles a tree, and she's like, oh, that's great, like I could do a Christmas tree. So it's like sort of like bridging, what a sighted person experienced, what a blind person experienced. So.
Your presentation was extremely well organized, and the story was well told. It was really on a professional level, the way we would do that.
Thank you.
Oh, and then one more thing, and I think one of the things that you guys really hit on the nail, and one of the things I was really excited about is packaging design. Like one of the things that we're doing is we're creating a device for blind people, and so like when they open it up, we have to make sure that experience is purely tactile. Like you don't need any sight at all to open the product, to understand where things are. And we've been looking a lot, or we've been exploring a lot around how we could use textured, not necessarily like language, but more kind of like, oh, well, if these dots are this long and they make you flow in this way, then you put your hand here, you'll naturally want to gravitate toward the thing that we want to go to with. And so one of the things that I really thought, and one of the biggest opportunity I see is like outside, after you get beyond like the art space, with children making art, I think what you really have is like, you have some kind of like textured prototyping tool that people can use, because right now it's like doing that type of work is, even for us as designers, it's a process. You gotta get wax printers or special equipment, and so being able to like quickly prototype, like texture-based elements and like packaging design, I think is gonna be like a huge opportunity as well. So yeah, really great job all in all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Emily and Natasja. Please join me in welcoming Daisy Chen and Adam Margolis.
Good afternoon.
My name is Daisy.
And I'm Adam Margolis.
Our project's name is called Avoir. It is a pre-installed software on your phone that transcribes vocal announcement into visual announcement on your phone for the individuals who are deaf, hard of hearing, or experiencing hearing loss.
So what we'll do is we'll intercept these audio announcements and they'll transcribe them into text that pop up on your phone. So this is a short video that sort of outlines some of the obstacles that individuals who are deaf or who experience hearing loss face on a daily basis.
It is challenging for people who have hearing impairments to hear public announcements. An airport environment is loud, and the voices over the public address systems are often inaudible. Some people can hear announcements, but others are unable to understand the important information being relayed. This can be stressful and cause unfortunate mishaps. In crowded shopping malls, it is easy for little children to get lost. Reuniting a child separate from his hearing impaired guardian is nearly impossible.
So what we wanted to do is make sure that all individuals who are deaf or who experience hearing loss are enabled to have the right to hear all audio announcements and get important information. So this is in places like restaurants and airports, loud places that a lot of people congregate where they might not be able to pick up on the announcements. So we spoke to around 30 people. Daisy and I sat at a Starbucks and we went to the Miami Deaf Center. And we spoke to people with varying levels of hearing loss or who were completely deaf. We also spoke to hearing people, and they said that a lot of the methods of communication or getting audio announcements were insufficient. So they ended up having to ask what the information was, or they had to inquire in another way. So during our research, we spoke to about 30 people, and the people that I'm about to introduce you to are just some representative of the diverse obstacles that we encountered. So this is Rhodes. We met him at the Starbucks, and he is 78 and retired, and he said that he's deaf in both ears. He uses hearing aids, and he travels with a helper. His helper has to write things down for him in order for him to actually understand what's going on. And he said that he gets angry, and a lot of the time, missing announcements wastes time. And he said that one time when he was at the gym, he missed the announcement that his car was being towed, and he ended up having an issue with that.
And this is Joseph. He is 46 years old and a orthodontic technician who has Asperger's syndrome. He can't really pay attention to the surrounding because he's always on his phone and like not really focused. And we heard that he talked to us about he gets frustrated when he can't hear announcement. And also once at the Grand Central Station in New York, it was really loud and he can't hear the announcement, so he missed the train because he didn't receive the information. And as a orthodontic technician, he always has to make announcement for the patients to proceed to the chair. So, but he has to do that a lot of times because they usually can't pay attention to that either.
Right. So because of his, because he has Asperger's, a lot of the time he gets comfort from his phone by like reading things on his phone. So a lot of the information would be popping up there. And then I spoke to a woman and her daughter, Sophie. She's 12, and she has autism. And she doesn't have any noticeable hearing loss, or she doesn't have anything with her hearing, but she wears headphones to block out loud noises. And because of her sensitivity, she ends up like texting her mother for a lot of the information that she needs. And her mother was explaining to us that at school, it's hard for her to hear, especially since she wears headphones most of the time. And because of that, something that would pop up on her phone, like her mother texts her, would be really helpful to her.
And these are based on the National Institution of Health, the data we pull out throughout the whole world, that the population that experience hearing loss.
So around 463 million people worldwide experience some sort of hearing loss. And in the United States, that's like approximately 46 million.
And this is also based on the data that we found in the National Institution of Health, that the relationship between population versus aging. So as you can see, when the people age, when they grow into their elder, the population of who experience hearing loss tend to increase a lot.
So this was our our initial concept. And originally, it was just sort of a way for people to get this information on their phone, and there wasn't really anything like that was super. It wasn't like a great system because we realized that a lot of these people sometimes they can't read what happens on their phone, or they're not like technologically proficient. So our goals ended up being to create convenience and improve efficiency, and really allow individuals who are deaf or who have hearing loss to be fully part of society.
And these are the goals and benefits that we came across. It's, as I said, it's transcribed public announcement for people who have hearing loss to see and have access to information. And the benefit of it is that it improves efficiency, creates convenience, increase accessibility, and also, the most importantly, satisfy customers.
So this is the process of how it would work. There would be a server that the place would have, and it would be connected to the PA system. And based on the location, like cellular data on your phone, what would happen would be your phone would determine your location, and based on that, you would get like location-specific announcements. So you get like general announcements like time, or like other important things that are happening. But you'd also get like specific announcements that are filtered by the Avoir connecting to other apps on your phone and other accounts.
So these are the applications that you guys probably have experienced before during lunch in the middle table there. It's a recording of the screen. And we added the second one, which the person is signing to the person who are looking at the phone. Because we talked to the Miami Deaf Center, they say different people who have different reading abilities. So it's really helpful for them to have a general apply to all kind of sign language so they know what it's talking about. Yeah.
Right, and we wanted to make sure that Avoir would be applicable to as many places as possible. So assembly places like airports and train stations and stadiums where there's a lot going on and people need information really quickly. and offices and like school environments. Also, like commerce and retail places like shops and restaurants, and then other places that information is vital, like hospitals, where like a split second of information can save someone's life. So
These are some obstacles that we came across when we talked to the 30 interviewers and also Miami Deaf Center. These really brought us into the need and the more detailed design, and also shows us there will be a lot of more options that could go under this design. The first one is that some individuals can't have, they don't have a mobile device, and also some don't want to type on their phones, mainly the elders, because the phones get them confused. And the third one is not suitable for individuals who are blind because they can't read the announcement. And then the fourth one is individuals who are very in technological proficiency. Some might have flip phones, some have touchscreen phones and other brands of phones. 5 is that some people who have difficult hearing, reading in different languages, because some know Chinese, some are Hispanic, know Spanish, and we know English. Yeah, different languages.
So what we wanted to look at was the way that it would work with the ADA. So the ADA says that there must be auxiliary materials that we provided to ensure effective communication. So essentially what Avoir does is it makes these verbal announcements available to everyone. And that way, these places that are making announcements ensure effective communication and are relieved of some sort of liability.
And this is the most exciting slide. This is my favorite slide. Okay. Avoir creates a universal impact. It not only applies to individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, but it also applies to normal people who are affected by external factors such as environmental noise, announcement speed, and then the announcement volume, and also other miscellaneous distractions such as when you're having conversation with others or you're reading a book and you get distracted and not focused.
Right.
Yeah, so it's
since
exciting.
everyone has, or a lot of the time, a lot of people have mobile devices, there's a broad reach. So it's inclusive to anyone who really has one of these devices.
Yeah, it almost feels like we're changing the world.
So that's Avoir. We're a solution-based software that will help people like Rhodes and Sophie and Joseph, but also help millions and millions of other people.
Yep.
So
And
thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions?
I love the project. I love what you're trying to do. Not just because I'm deaf myself, but I think it's something that's important. I love the fact that you extended it from not just deaf and hard of hearing people, but to other situations. That's really important, especially in trying to launch something. And I like how you found out that it's important not to just have feedback come in the form of text, but also in sign language. That was really important. I wonder, what was your initial inspiration for this project?
Well, initially it was a school assignment, and we wanted to make sure that we focused on a group of people that would be able to receive this sort of information. And we looked at like people like my grandfather who wears hearing aids in both ears. My father who has tinnitus, and a lot of the times they miss like a lot of announcements, and we wanted to make something that would help them. And then also in school, a lot of the time our teacher actually has to quiet down the whole classroom because we're really loud, and he needs to quiet everyone down in order to actually hear the general like PA announcements. And we thought of sort of translating that like from like a speech to text software.
Yeah.
First of all, I'll say I love that you took a business angle to it, that there's a value proposition here for businesses to be more compliant. And even from Casper, the mattress company, we have to think about that constantly as we design mattress stores and how people who are handicapped can try the beds as much and as well as everyone else. I love the universality of it, and it made me think about even airport situations today where airlines are starting to roll out these big screens that say like what zone they're calling, because it's such a problem. Everyone's
Right.
always asking if you're ever waiting in line for an airplane, what zone did they call? Did you hear it? And it's so much more of an expensive and heavy infrastructure solution what they're doing versus what you're doing, which is very lightweight, doesn't require a lot of expense on the technology side, and any business could opt into no matter how big or small. And so sort of last question is, I'm curious if you got any feedback from businesses on it.
We
Yes.
didn't. Well, sort of.
Yeah, a little. So when we talked to the mentors on the mentor weekend, the head of AC4D, which is Coco, I think, he actually talked to us about like in business, like why would they like buy this? Why would they being focused, and also why would we like see it as an important thing? So yeah, I think the reason why we created this, it's like we wanted people who have very like difficult daily access to become more convenient. It's kind of an emotional approach than a business. So we kind of try to find the balancing point between those two, and this is what we ended up having.
And we understood that through his advice that we needed to create a product that would help as many people as possible and strike a chord with people, not like all sorts of people, but it would also sort of we kind of got a little like with the law, with the ADA, making sure that like a business would be interested in like having themselves being relieved of a little bit more liability. So in case something goes wrong, like when you're at an airport, if you miss your flight because like a gate change happened and you didn't hear it, like you have to go to a person and like rebook your flight. So with this, it's like you still do that, but when you talk to them, like I didn't hear the announcement, it's like it was on your phone. Like why didn't you see it? So the airline, in effect, like it might like save a little bit of money for the airline.
And it also really increased the customer satisfaction.
Well, not just that. It's also like we were talking to Mary Anderson, who was a designer for Target, and she was saying that they use a software to share like different product ideas and for people to like comment on them. And with this, it's like she can have a lot of different people like having the same information at once. And that way, when if we're selling it to an airport or to an airline, whatever business, they'd be able to like send something mass out at the same time, so that as many people as possible could get it.
Yeah.
Great work and great presentation. I was also happy to hear about your learnings from the mentor weekend.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the name. Did you come up with that from the start? Talk to
Yeah.
us a little bit about the branding idea.
Okay, so avoir, it's we kind of searched online that avoir is a Latin root to hear, to understand, and French word is to see.
Revoir,
I think. Yeah, avoir.
Like to like au revoir, like
It's
see you
like-
later, something like
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. And we wanted to for the icon, we wanted to create something bright that would like make sure that people could see it.
So we
Yeah.
chose orange. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'll go and I have a few things. So first of all, I'm a big fan of like when you talk to people and get information directly from them. So the 30 interviews, because I know interviews are always a challenging thing to do. So kudos on that. I'm curious. My first question is how did you find a Starbucks that has so many people that were deaf?
Well, it wasn't. So I was actually. So I live in a neighborhood where I think there's a large elderly population. I live in like North Miami Beach, so there's a lot of retired people. And actually, the Starbucks that we sat in, is the busiest Starbucks in Florida, and like the number 2, it has the second most revenue in the entire country. So people are coming in and out all the time, and a lot of the times they actually have to like scream names in order for people to get their drinks. And we went on a Sunday when there was like people like with their families, and there were a lot of like people coming in and out, and a lot of the people that we talked to, they had varying levels of like hearing ability. Like Rhodes, who we spoke to, he lost his hearing over time, and we spoke to a few other people that lost their hearing over time, but it's not as bad. And since they were elderly, they really like sort of understood or tried to understand what we were trying to do. But I mean, it was also just like the amount of time we spent there, like new people coming in and out, and like going to the deaf center really helped because then we were actually able to speak to a whole group of people that
Are
really,
deaf, really
like,
deaf,
could give
yeah.
us really really good information. Yeah.
And then the other thing I was curious about is when I was over there, when I was looking at it before you came in, I thought it was a great idea. I thought the business case for it was really, really strong, which was, I think, fantastic. I'm curious as to like why did you choose transcribing as opposed to just like having sending the text files directly, like taking it from the air as a level of complication to it.
Well, I think we initially, one of the things that the mentors told us was it was a sort of thing where we had a worker type stuff in, and Coco, who was telling us that there was like a huge added expense for like businesses to have that. Plus, they have to, if they're gonna have a server, they can like just download something already to their server. So we took that out of it, and when we went to IBM in Austin, and we met people who were working on the speech text system for Watson, and they said that there'd be ways that they could like code into a phone or a software this sort of like speech to text system that would then allow like sort of the specific voice of the announcements to be like and picked up and then translated into the device.
Yeah.
And then with that, we wanted to like have another sort of approach to it where there was information from like your Google account on your phone, like it knew what flight you're in, so it's like it can like send you specific announcements to that.
Yeah.
So that also takes away like sort of the worker element. And transcribing is just because it's like we wanted to have it be like heard and then written out. Yeah.
Like a filter system.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, that's one of the more interesting elements of what is a very interesting project. I think that the way that you took a very specific use case and turned it into kind of a universal solution is really interesting. And I think there's actually another level that you guys can go to. Obviously, we're in an attention economy right now, that there is constant, hey, that we all experience on a daily, almost minute-to-minute basis. And if there are ways that you could sort of take this kind of platform and think about how do we do that kind of filtering notification, that can be a potentially universally applied solution that a lot of people would really crave.
That's a really important point.
Yeah, we wanted to have as many uses for it as possible too. So it could be like also like just other things that could come up like all the time, like in schools, like or hospitals when you have like an ambulance coming in, like the person in the ambulance could like send a message to Avoir, and Avoir would pop up on like all the emergency staff's phones. So they would be like, we're having this case come in, and they could prepare.
Yeah. And also traffic.
Well, I don't know.
Well, yeah, because ambulance go across on the road, and what if people gets the notification, like let it go through or something like that? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to welcome Will, Sean, and Eddie to the stage.
That didn't feel good.
Hello, I'm Will Compton.
I'm Sean O'Neill.
And I'm Eddie Smith, and we're from San Luis Obispo, California, and our product is the Sequoia. So this started out as a project we were tasked with by our local preschool that is situated next to our high school. And so they came with us and asked us to redesign a table that they had that could fit their whole class and that could have wheelchair accessibility for future students that would need it or staff. So we went through multiple design iterations and over 15 marks of CAD plans and came up with this product, the Sequoia.
So what we thought was a logical place to start once we were given the project of redesigning a picnic table was to look at existing picnic table designs. We're not going to build one on our own from the ground up. And the main problems that we saw with these designs fell into one of two categories. One being that they weren't accessible at all. Most picnic tables have legs in awkward spots that don't allow wheelchairs to roll in at all. And obviously that wouldn't work. Picnic tables that are wheelchair accessible often fell short in the fact that they either were unaesthetic, and businesses that seat large venues or are like high-end businesses like wineries or things like that were didn't really want to put them in their venues because they didn't look good. And then the second problem that we would often run into is that wheelchair users would feel marginalized or kind of as an afterthought, because a lot of picnic tables put wheelchair seating on the very end for the reason that they don't want to sacrifice the main seating in the middle of the table that will be used all of the time. So those were kind of the initial problems that we were looking to deal with. And then the next step was to research exactly what ADA compliance necessitated. So we went online and we did research on what the ADA compliance standards are, and it basically is this box of space that you have to fit in your table. And just to kind of simplify it down, it's 27 inches tall, and that has to be roughly exact. There's not like a big margin there. It has to be a minimum of 30 inches wide and a minimum of 19 inches under the table. And then there's also a kind of area of space for the wheelchair, but that doesn't apply as much to the table as it does. There just has to be open space around the table. So that wasn't as much of a concern. Our final design ended up meeting and exceeding these. We did hit the 27 inches tall. It was 30 inches wide at the very narrowest, but because of the angled design, it ended up being around 48 inches from here to here, which we got feedback on later was actually a very positive thing. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then it extended 28 inches under the table. So there were no problems that we ended up running into there. It was very accessible, and the wheelchair had a very significant amount of room. And so this is what ended up being our solution. It's an ADA compliant, fully ADA compliant, and what's great about it is it has removable seats. And that allows it to maintain a full seating capacity when the wheelchair function is not in use, because the seats can be placed back on the table and you can still seat people in those locations. We built it out of redwood, so it also maintains a very high aesthetic appeal, so high-end venues will be very willing to place it there. It looks good, and it especially goes well in wineries. We live on the Central Coast. There's a lot of wineries there. We've been targeting them as a business group. We've got a lot of positive feedback about how the table looks, especially from them. And then finally, like we said, it places the person at the middle of the table rather than the outside. And that, as we got feedback from Savannah, was an absolutely huge plus. We spent a couple periods at school working with students who use wheelchairs regularly. And Savannah gave us incredible feedback. We spent time with a number of different students, but Savannah by far was gave us some of the most positive reviews. I was honestly very surprised with what she thought of our table. Like, I didn't think that it would be quite as big of a deal as what she ended up making it up to be. The first problem that she told us about was that it's kind of tough to see in this picture. It'll be a little clearer in the next video, but her wheelchair has a controller arm that allows her to control it without having to move the wheels. It is robotically controlled. And that controller arm extends up above the armrest. And because of that, lots of times the controller arm will run into the tabletop, and it'll kind of like stop her from getting all the way into the table. So she has to either lean forward or kind of scoot forward in the wheelchair. And because our table is built strictly to the standards of ADA and has a relatively thin top, that controller arm was able to slide over the top of the table while the rest of the armrest slid underneath. So that wasn't a problem for her, and that is something that she noted is great. Another thing that she really enjoyed was the width of the seat. Like we talked about before, we have a full 48-inch span that's more than 50% larger than the necessary requirement. And what that allowed is that allowed her assistant, her aide, to sit on the edge of the other bench and swing her legs into the same compartment as the wheelchair, which was huge because she was able to help her eat, help her do anything that she needed help with while she was sitting there at the table. And that's something that lots of times they would struggle with. Her mentor would either be standing over her kind of awkwardly to the side, or they would be looking for another chair to pull up. And so because they have a pretty intimate connection and they work together a lot, she thought that it was absolutely fantastic that her mentor was able to sit so close to her. And then lastly, she absolutely loved being at the middle of the table. Like just, we sat there with a bunch of other people as well, and she was just beaming. Like seeing her smile and being able to provide her with that experience felt really good, and she really raved about it. So I was proud that we were able to kind of be a part of that and inspire such a positive reaction.
So this is a video of Savannah rolling into the table. As you can see, the armrest goes beneath and the controller goes right above. And then, yeah, right there. And then she's very close to the table and can have full mobility, reaching anything she needs to get to. Okay. And then this slide is video of, as Will was saying, everybody around the table with two people in wheelchairs in the center of it. And so they're in the middle of the conversation up front and center, and they're not feeling marginalized or as an afterthought, but on the end of the table. So that's a big deal for them. And then this video shows the maximum capacity of the table, which is 16 people. And so there's still a good amount of room each side. Like Sean and I were sitting there with everybody, and you can still get your arms out, put your elbows on the table and stuff like that. Reach out, get the potato salad in the middle, you know. Yeah. And so living in California on the Central Coast is a big part of our culture, being outside with picnics and barbecues. So being able to create a product like this, where there's so many people just being able to come and congregate and have a good time, it's a really good feeling to be able to create something like that.
So what makes our removable seats so easy and intuitive is the implementation of our channel locking pin system. Our proprietary pin system design that you can see behind me allows the seat to be locked in or unlocked with the simple push or pull of a pin. When the seats aren't being used, pull the pin, lift it up, and you can dispose of it in wheelchair access. But if no wheelchair access is needed, the seat can be reapplied, push the pins into place, and it's there for the users. The channels that are routed out in the sides of the support system allow the seat to be placed back flawlessly every time. So there's no error when replacing a seat.
And then here's a picture. We decided to attach the pin to the board itself so that it couldn't be lost or misplaced, so that because it's attached, it's always there.
So the videos you're about to see are the removal and replacement of the seats. So as you can see in the video, pull the pin, lift up, take the seat away. And then when the need should arise to have the seat back in place, drop it in, channel lines it up, push the pin back in place, and it locks into place. Now it's just as easy with one person. Pull the pin, lift up, and the wheelchair access is available. Putting it back, the channel lines it up, push the pins back into place, and it locks it securely in place.
So in this design right here, our custom bracketry is the main support of the table. So we have 4 support systems on either side that come in and converge at one point. And so we have brackets locking them in place with bolts running through them. And so once you lock it in, there's no movement whatsoever. And then on the top, as you can see in the bottom picture, there's only on one side so that the top can sit flat and there's no bumps or anything once you put the top on. So then our prototype that we made, the first thing we did was very crucial to our design because we noticed a couple minor flaws in the comfortability of it. So first off was the seat height. So originally it was a little bit too high, so we had some short people sit on it and the legs would kind of dangle a little bit and it wasn't very comfortable at all. And so we lowered that a little bit, which created more vertical room between the seat and the tabletop. And we also changed our leg angle to push the table in more, which created more linear space, so it's just easier to get into. And then we also put a 4x4 through the middle of the bracket, which pushed everything 4 inches wider, so it just created more room around the table overall.
Great picture of our prototype with black spray paint, and it looks terrible. I think that's the point of prototypes, right?
Yeah, so it was really important for us to design a table that not only looked good, functioned well, but would stand the test of time. So when we went to build the table for the preschool, we immediately chose redwood because it's a resilient wood, but that wasn't quite enough for us. So we applied a waterproof deck stain that would keep water out, moisture out, allow no degradation of the wood whatsoever. We also made sure that any exposed metal was either galvanized, powder coated, or zinc. We also added stainless steel pins and stainless steel bushings around the pins so that the pins would not get locked in place. Because when we had the prototype, one of the biggest problems was when the wood got wet, it would clamp down on the pin, allowing the seat not to be removed because the pin would be stationary. So further refining the design, we added an umbrella hole and then rounded out the corners of the table so that if it were to be hit, it would not do any damage, or it would do minimal damage to the person who ended up hitting it. We also epoxied the bottom of the feet and the channels in which the seat drops into place so that we epoxied the bottom of the feet so that no water would get sucked up into the table. And then we epoxied the channels so that when replacing and removing the seat, it wouldn't mess up that channel at all, so we had a perfect fit up every time. Just increase the durability.
And then kind of our final steps moving forward. is we're looking to create a tiered product system. One of the drawbacks of redwood, it looks fantastic and it lasts a long time, but it costs a lot. It's very expensive. And so when we're selling this product, a lot of the wineries will stumble at the cost. It's a lot. So we're currently in the process of making another model out of Douglas fir wood. And because the wood is not quite as strong as the redwood, we're having to use other finishing processes, polyurethane and things like that to seal it up, which do take significantly longer, so it does take longer to build. But we're actually able to drop the price by more than half by changing woods. So we're experimenting with different woods to kind of create a tiered product system. And then we're looking to identify specific locations like specific wineries and target them with the material, bring the information to them about what we have available and kind of let them know what we can do for them. So thank you guys for your time, and we'll take any questions if you have them.
So are you guys going to college next, or are you just going to open up the factory? That
was a thought. That was a thought, for sure. Well, we're looking to try and capitalize as much as we can this summer.
Yeah, definitely over summer.
That's great. Congratulations on that. Question on the size of table you chose. It looked like you zeroed in on this very large octagon table at the very beginning. What led you to that decision, and did you look at any other options?
ADA compliance.
Well, so ADA compliance is a part because, like you said, there's a relatively large area of space you have to fit in, and so if you're going to fit it on both sides of the table, it necessitates it kind of being wide. But another reason was this project was brought to us by a preschool. And I think we said that at the beginning, the preschool wanted to be able to sit an entire class of preschoolers, 25 kids at the same table. And so that was because that's kind of how that's how it began. That's kind of where we followed up. And then it ended up kind of moving towards that outdoor seating at wineries that could also use a large number of people.
Might be a nice thing to look at in the future. Is different.
Yeah, that is something we're exploring right now, is a smaller version of the table, because that is feedback that we've gotten from the wineries, is that they don't necessarily need such a big table, but they have loved our design and loved the pin system and the removable seats. They definitely think it's something of value. So we are currently messing with CAD, our CAD programs, to find a way to make a smaller table, but still implement that channel locking pin system.
Yeah. The model that we've been working with mostly has been just a rectangular one. Kind of looks similar, but a rectangle, and that allows it to get shorter and skinnier, because instead of 4 supports going out, you just have 2. It makes it a little more manageable.
One of the things that I really admire about your solution is its flexibility, that it allows for a kind of invisible multi-use situation, which I think is super, super smart, that you don't have this is the table for the handicapped people situation. And that points to the thing that I think is actually exceptional about your solution, which is it not only solves a very specific problem, but it also points to and kind of embodies a culture change, right? Of bringing people with physical handicaps literally into the center and demarginalizing them physically. That points to an impulse towards inclusivity and focus that I think is a super important part of the kinds of dialogue that we're trying to have with exhibitions like you guys are having right now, and just this whole kind of project overall. So congratulations. I think that's really compelling.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm about to say, I think that yeah, your solution was pretty awesome. I remember, so my first thoughts when I looked at it, I was like, oh, it's a picnic table. You know what I'm saying? Like, but then like when I saw like the samples and like the pieces, and I'm just like, oh, this is actually pretty simple and genius. This is like, it's almost like, you know, like you could make a table yourself, or you could just like own the patents for the pen and just talk to bench makers who already make benches. You know, just
that's actually another thing that we're exploring too. I think Sean has a connection of someone who might be willing to buy or at least work with a patent, where they would be the ones producing it and not us.
But when we were designing the product of the pin system, it was definitely important for us for it to be easy and very easily understood. Very intuitive.
Yeah. And the only thing I think, and you know, you guys probably would need a bit more work on this, but like, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to do something with the seat when it's not on the table. And right now, it just kind of looks like it's like.
Yeah.
We
throw it
we
away.
for a brief period of time we messed around with making it like a booster seat at another part of the table. But we've ran into other complications that we're trying to figure out before we dedicate it for one thing.
Also, you can fit it in the middle, so like right kind of there. We're standing in the way, you can't see, but basically there's the bottom and top support structures, and so you can take the seats and they both stack under the middle of the table. But that wasn't really working either because, I mean, we can get in there and stack them easily, but we're relatively young, agile people, so if we're not the ones working it, it's a little bit more difficult to get it in there. So that's a great point.
Yeah, exactly. And then, was there anything else? Yeah, all in all, I think that like, to Mike's point, I think that there was a very wonderful part about the fact that it wasn't, because like we get this all the time from blind people, is that blind people don't want to wear a device that's like you're wearing the blind device. It's like it's actually a big proponent for why it takes so long for people to start using their white canes. Is because they don't want to be seen as blind, and if they have some functional vision, they'll just opt out of that experience until they can't anymore. And so the fact that, like the table kind of like is a regular table and all means very beautiful regular table, and then like all of a sudden this magic kind of unfolds when you need it is a really beautiful part of it. And then to your point as well about being in the center, because I think like I think that like people with disabilities, it's easy to marginalize them because you might not understand how to interact with them best. So you're talking with a blind person, you don't know how much of you they can see unless you have those conversations, which are very personal conversations usually to have. And so by putting a person almost kind of at the center, you kind of construct ways for that dialogue to occur kind of naturally. And I think that's a really beautiful part of the solution. So really, really good job on and the engineering looks great. That joint looks crazy. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe a little overbuilt.
Yeah, it's got 11 pins on it. It's a little tricky to assemble.
It's incredibly rigid.
I wanted to add the level of prototyping you guys did was really impressive. The fact that you have a functional works like and looks like model is really convincing and just feels like it's ready to go.
Yeah, we did actually deliver it to that preschool a couple months back. It was just after Austin.
Amazing. And
the kids so far have loved it. Everything's still working great, so.
Awesome. Yeah, to build on sort of Keith and Mike's point about the inclusivity of this, I actually think it's universally even maybe better as a picnic table for everyone. It's a really like conversational form factor that maybe is better as a picnic table for non-hearing hearing impaired handicapped users. I was curious about use cases besides like a picnic setting.
Yeah.
First, I'm really jealous that most of the use cases around you are wineries. Really wish I lived in San Luis Obispo at this point. But it made me think about like lunchrooms in schools and other places where people are eating communally.
Yeah, so we've thought about like state parks too, where you need to have benches that are secured so people don't just take off and walk away, And so like parks.
Right now we're building one for Sean's parents. They're paying us to build the cheaper one, so it's going to go in their backyard.
Yeah. Nice. And then after Mentor Weekend, one of the areas that he wanted us to explore was different aesthetics to the table, like maybe one with like a concrete top and an aluminum subframe that could fit different venues. Because the redwood, though it does complement a lot of areas nicely, it is kind of a specific outdoorsy type look.
You wouldn't put this in like
you
the dining room.
Yeah, it doesn't really work super well inside.
Yeah.
So if we were going to experiment with other more modern, even looking venues, we've looked at some other material options too.
As far as functionality, other than the wheelchair accessibility, I know one of my dad's friends who's a camper removed the seat and liked the fact that he could stand at the tabletop, like if he was cooking or something, that he didn't have to, like at campsites or something where the seat is attached, he has to lean over the bench part of the seat to like get to his barbecue or something, and having that open area where he can walk in and maneuver was definitely something that he found very appealing.
Nice.
I would add just a couple other thoughts. One is, I think often the best designs have this sense of inevitability and surprise, and I think that there's evidence of that in what you've done, because it does have that sense of inevitability, but then there is that sort of joyful degree of understanding in terms of what it could actually mean to a group of people who felt that they've actually been left off, to the side, literally and figuratively. The point about being in the middle, symbolically and emotionally, I think is so important in terms of the cultural statement that it can make. When I think, though, about true user experience, the one area that I would be curious to learn more about in terms of your process is if you ever studied dining room tables or other tables where the leaf in the table is actually designed to come in or come out or fold. Because for me, even though I love the ease of the pin system, I would say two things. One, the symbolism of taking the seat and putting it somewhere versus the idea of some manner of it folding or folding under
Kind of like
in this
addition rather than
really kind of
subtraction.
integrated way that has an equal degree of respect and ease, rather than it feeling as though the process of having to do it, even though it is really easy to take away and replace, the feeling that you would have by being the person in the wheelchair, I think would change versus if it had this integrated ability to just be incorporated into the design. And I know you talked about just the practicality of the slabs themselves, but I wonder if there's just further prototyping or experimenting that you can do from that gesture, because I think you've come so far, but I think there's a degree of exploration in terms of its integration that I think might be useful to consider.
Yeah, definitely.
On that point, I think the fact that this requires personnel to come and remove that seat, if there's some way that the people stepping up could do it
A
themselves.
person in a wheelchair could
Yeah.
remove the seat by themselves.
That's another reason why wineries have been an excellent target for us, is because often there are going to be personnel there who can help aid with that. But I think that's an excellent point about the self-sufficiency and kind of just, there are other ways to accomplish things with different designs.
I would, first off, I echo all of the comments here. It's a wonderful design. I love that it's also, it's beautiful. Many times when we design things to accommodate people with disabilities, the aesthetics are, it drops a level. But on that point of also making it easier to put away and allow the person who's in the wheelchair to initiate and do that, I think it would also be important, I would encourage you to consider people with limited dexterity as well. Because the pin might be difficult for them to pull out. But
Yeah, so maybe something
Awesome.
with a little bit bigger handle, that they get their whole hand.
have a bigger hand. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but I also think that to the point of everyone else, but that could you guys approach this from a very kind of engineering point of view?
Definitely, yeah.
So
definitely.
I feel like one industrial designer in your team is that's all we do is furniture, So it's I feel like that would open up with the prototyping skills that you have to kind of build out these models that work really well, and someone who or for yourselves to dig a bit deeper into furniture design, and there's tons of research on it that you can kind of pull up, but I think that might kind of start to set the standard for what types of things you might really be able to do with it.
Okay.
And I agree. I like the idea of somehow the thing folding out, or because even when a regular person is sitting on a bench, I got to do that thing where I jump in the Dukes of Hazzard into the window.
That's you should have
my
seen
grandma can't do
the
that.
prototype. The prototype was hilarious. The seat and the tabletop were almost vertically aligned, and so to get into it was definitely a
Definitely a
dance
challenge.
reminiscent of that. So, but.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
great.
And that was something that was super beneficial of actually building it. The CAD program did not show us that whatsoever.
Yeah, you can't jump into your CAD.
In your CAD program, and then when we actually built it, it was this needs to change. This has to change.
Speaking of the process, I'm so impressed by your level of engineering and construction. Can you talk a little bit about how you got there and what you learned
So it's basically we have
during the process?
We owe it to our
exceptional
shop program.
We've won national prizes for our metal shop, and our wood shop is just phenomenal. We have pretty much all the tools we have, and
That's cool.
our teachers have been really supportive of our whole endeavor here too.
The support is just endless with them.
Yeah.
Mr. B, our teacher, actually supplied us with the materials and all the tools to create our prototype and then our final product. So without him and without the resources of our school and even our metal shop teacher, it just would not have been possible.
Yeah, like you said, we have access to a lot of also unique things that a lot of schools don't have access to. Like the brackets are cut on a plasma cutter. That's not something that's commonly in most shops. So I would say that we've been blessed with the graces of an excellent shop. Like I'm going to college, and I chose the college because it's the only one out of everywhere I got in that has something comparable, and that's something that I'm don't really want to leave. So we've been blessed for sure.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So big round of applause now to all of our finalists. The judges have a very difficult decision to make, but at this time I'll ask all of our finalists.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yes, feel free to sit
So you start.
Okay, sure.
I can start.
Where would you like it?
You can be right in front of the podium.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I am Todd Waterbury, Chief Creative Officer from Target, and really pleased to be here with all of you today. We had an intense and inspiring conversation. So I'm sure that many of you are wondering, are they going to bring us in at some point? Have they forgotten about us? We have not forgotten about you. In fact, all the work that we saw had such a deep and profound effect on each of us in terms of what the challenge actually stood for, and very excited to share the fact that we have a winner. Wanted to talk a little bit first about what each one of the entries meant for all of us, and Caroline asked me to say a couple of words. I think I'll start with the first one, go in the order that they were presented. To understand the importance of mark making, and to understand the importance of creating tools for people who are sight challenged to be able to express themselves and to be able to find a way to represent what they're feeling, what they want to communicate, but in new ways was something that was really inspiring to us about the first century. The second was the idea of being able to generate a level of connection and comfort out in the world where many people who are hearing challenged may feel as though they are disconnected from the ability to make the right choices at the right moment. That idea for us had tremendous potential because of the scale of the impact that could take place in culture. And knowing importantly about how much the device that we walk around with really is the remote control of our lives, and being able to integrate something in that for us was really inspiring. And for the third, it's hard to deny when you actually look at the design that was proposed, the meaning of it in terms of symbolism relative to inclusivity, and being able to make it very easy for people to be included in a conversation and a meal, no matter what their ability or their challenged ability. And for the third, it was really important for us to understand that that design actually elevated the standard of what it meant to be together and to be outside. So there are many things about each of the three that we loved, and we had healthy debate about which one rose to the point that we wanted to recognize for process, for the prototype, and for the potential of what it means in terms of design and the competition. So I'm going to give that to Carolyn Bowman.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, parents. I'm sure you were biting your nails in the design studio. But most of all, you should be so proud. You know, we really had a tough time choosing between these three fantastic projects. Thank you so much, students, for your stellar presentations. Our real mission here is to inspire, educate, and empower, but you have inspired us. You have empowered us. And you've given us great optimism for the future with all three cases. So all of you are winners. And remember that over 1,000 students worked towards this competition. That's pretty amazing that there are 7 of you standing here, right? So bravo, bravo, bravo. And I'm very excited to announce that the winner today is ArtShare, Emily and Natasja. So congratulations.
I'm speechless.
And remember, we'll be sharing all 3 presentations at Cooper Hewitt, which is just fantastic, and then you'll be joining us for National Design Week. So we're very proud of all of you, and I hope you've enjoyed this experience immensely. So congratulations, students, congratulations, parents, and thank you, jurors. And thank you, Target.
I was literally like, what am I going to say? It's hard. So, okay.